The alarm shrieked through Station Alpha's corridors with a sound that made every alien species on board recoil in primal terror. Fire. The word itself was taboo in most galactic languages, spoken only in hushed tones when absolutely necessary. On this massive orbital platform that housed over 50,000 beings from across the Federation, nothing was more feared than the hungry, consuming flames. Commander Vexus, a towering Krylline with scales that shimmered purple under stress, watched the monitors with 4 sets of eyes wide with horror. Section 7 was engulfed. The temperature readings climbed beyond what most species could comprehend. Already, the automated systems had failed. The fire suppression drones had melted into slag. "Evacuate the entire eastern wing," Vexus commanded, her voice trembling. "Seal the blast doors. We'll vent that section to space if we must." "Commander, there are still 73 beings trapped in that section," reported Lieutenant Morvik, a gray-skinned Pelion whose bioluminescent patches flickered with anxiety. "The corridors are blocked. They can't reach the evacuation pods." Vexus's claws scraped against the console. Every instinct screamed at her to seal the section, to sacrifice the few for the many. Fire didn't negotiate. Fire didn't show mercy. In the vacuum of space, a single flame could mean death for thousands. "How long until it reaches the oxygen recyclers?" she asked. 18 minutes, Commander. Maybe less." The bridge fell silent except for the continued wailing of alarms. The crew, Krylline, Pelions, Vorthax, and a dozen other species, all understood the mathematics of survival. They would mourn the 73. They would honor their sacrifice. But they would not risk more lives against fire. That's when Jake Morrison walked onto the bridge. The human moved with purpose, his footsteps heavy in boots that seemed absurdly thick for station life. He wore a strange yellow and black jacket with reflective strips, and he carried a helmet under one arm. At 6 feet tall, he was unremarkable compared to the Krylline, but there was something in his posture that commanded attention. "I heard we have a fire," Jake said simply. Vexus stared at him as if he'd spoken madness. "Human Morrison, you will evacuate with the others. We are preparing to vent Section 7. Jake shook his head, already checking the seals on his jacket. 73 people trapped, right? That's what I heard." He moved to the equipment locker and began pulling out thermal gear. "I'll need someone to talk me through the station layout. And I'll need those fire drones reactivated, even if they're damaged." "You cannot be serious," Morvik said, his patches flashing red with alarm. "The temperature in those corridors is over 800 degrees. The smoke alone would kill most species in seconds." Jake pulled on his helmet and activated his breathing apparatus. Through the visor, his eyes were calm, almost relaxed. "Yeah, that sounds about right for a structure fire. Pretty standard Tuesday for me back on Earth." He grabbed a thermal axe from the emergency equipment. "Clock's ticking, Commander. Are you going to help me save those people, or are you going to stand here and watch them die?" For a moment, Vexus couldn't move. Every fiber of her being screamed that this human was walking toward certain death. But in his eyes, she saw something she'd never witnessed before, someone who looked at fire not with fear, but with professional determination. The human firefighter was already heading toward the inferno. Jake Morrison moved through the corridor at a practice jog, his thermal scanner held in front of him. Behind him, Lieutenant Morvik's voice crackled through the comm system, guiding him through the labyrinth of Station Alpha's eastern wing. The Pelion had volunteered, insisted, on being his remote guide, though his voice shook with barely controlled terror. "Human Morrison, the temperature ahead is rising rapidly. 900 degrees now. Your suit's tolerance." "My suit's rated for 1,200 degrees for short exposures," Jake interrupted calmly. "And call me Jake. We're going to be talking a lot in the next few minutes." He paused at an intersection, checking his scanner. The heat signature painted the walls ahead in angry reds and oranges. "How far to the trap survivors?" 70 meters north," then 40 meters east. But Jake, the main corridor collapsed. Fire consumed the support beams. Then I'll make a new path. Jake examined the wall panels, his experienced eyes reading the station structure like a book. These walls are standard composite, right? Titanium carbon matrix. Yes, but... Good. Fire loves them, but they hold their structural integrity longer than steel. He marked a spot with thermal chalk. I'm going to breach through the maintenance conduits. Reroute me. As Jake began cutting through the wall panel with his thermal axe, he could feel the heat even through his gear. The axe glowed as it ate through the metal, and he worked with the steady rhythm of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Back on Earth, in Chicago Station 47, he'd been known as the Mole for his ability to find paths through collapsed buildings. Jake, I must ask, Morvik's voice came through, curious despite the fear. Why do humans train for this? Why would your species willingly face fire? Jake grunted as he pulled away a section of wall. Because someone has to. He crawled into the maintenance conduit, his scanner showing the way forward. Fire's been with humanity since we lived in caves. We learned early, you either control it, or it controls you. Can't spend your whole life running from it. But the fear. Oh, I'm scared, Jake admitted, crawling forward through the narrow space. The metal beneath his gloves was hot enough to feel even through his thermal protection. Fire scares the hell out of me every single time. But fear's just information. It tells you to be careful, to respect what you're dealing with. It doesn't mean you stop. He emerged into a junction and checked his bearings. The roar of the flames was audible now, a deep, consuming sound that resonated through the structure. Smoke poured through a nearby vent, thick and black, carrying chemicals he didn't want to identify. Temperature at 1050 degrees, Morvik warned. You're approaching your suit's limits. Story of my life. Jake activated his foam dispenser and began laying down a suppression line, creating a temporary barrier against the worst of the heat. What's the atmosphere in the survivor's chamber? Still breathable, but they're reporting smoke inhalation symptoms. And Jake, 12 of them are cryaliens. They're crystalline-based. Heat above 600 degrees causes their cellular structure to fracture. Jake swore under his breath. That changed things. He couldn't just lead them back through the heat. He needed to create a cool corridor, a safe path. All right, new plan. Can you activate the emergency coolant systems in sections 7C through 7F? Those systems are designed for equipment failure, not fire suppression. The pressure might. Do it. I'll handle the pressure. Jake positioned himself at the next junction, reading the station's fire spread on his scanner. The inferno had a pattern, like all fires did. It moved, breathed, hunted for fuel and oxygen. But patterns could be disrupted. Fire's smart, but it follows rules. Break the rules, and you can beat it. You speak of fire as if it's alive, Morvik observed. In a way, it is. Jake began setting up a containment barrier using emergency bulkheads and his remaining foam. It eats, it breathes, it grows. But unlike most living things, it's predictable if you know what you're looking for. The coolant activation klaxon sounded, and Jake braced himself as liquid nitrogen flooded the surrounding conduits. Steam exploded through the vents as fire and ice met in violent collision. The temperature dropped rapidly, 850, 700, 550 degrees. Pathway cooling, Jake reported, moving forward through the clearing mist. I'm approaching the survivor's position now. Through the smoke and steam, he saw the sealed door. Behind it, 73 beings waited, probably certain they were going to die. Jake knocked on the door with his thermal axe. Firefighter Morrison, he called out. I'm here to take you home. The door's seal released with a hiss of escaping air, and Jake Morrison found himself facing a wall of terrified alien faces. The survivors were huddled in the chamber, a cargo bay that had become their prison. 12 cryaliens clustered in the corner, their crystalline bodies already showing stress fractures from the heat. A family of Vorthax shielded their young with their bulk. 3 dozen other species, many of whom Jake couldn't identify, stared at him with expressions ranging from hope to disbelief. "Listen up," Jake said, his voice firm but calm through his helmet's external speakers. "My name is Jake Morrison. I'm a firefighter from Earth. I'm getting all of you out of here, but I need you to follow my instructions exactly. No questions, no hesitation. Understood?" A tall Vorthax, his blue skin mottled with soot, stepped forward. "Human, the corridor outside is impassable. We monitored the temperatures. No biological being can survive." "I just did," Jake interrupted. "And you will too, if you listen." He pulled emergency thermal wraps from his pack, the silvery sheets designed for exactly this scenario. "The cryaliens are priority. Get these thermal wraps on them immediately. Double layer. They need maximum protection." The Vorthax hesitated only a moment before grabbing the wraps and organizing the others. Jake approved, natural leadership in a crisis. He made a mental note to work with that. "Commander Vexus," Jake spoke into his comm, "I have survivors, all alive. Preparing for evacuation. I need continuous coolant flow through sections 7C to 7E, and I need emergency oxygen stations set up at junctions 4, 7, and 9. Vexus's voice came back, tinged with something that might have been awe. "Acknowledged, Human Morrison. But the fire is spreading toward your position. You have perhaps 8 minutes before it cuts off your return path. Then we'd better move fast." Jake turned back to the survivors. "Here's the situation. The corridor I came through is cooled, but it's narrow and full of smoke. You'll be breathing through emergency respirators. Some of you might panic. That's normal. But if you stop, you endanger everyone behind you. So we keep moving, no matter what." He began distributing respirators, showing each species how to secure them. The cryaliens, now wrapped in thermal protection, looked like silver statues. The youngest ones were trembling, their crystalline structure vibrating with fear. Jake knelt beside one young cryalien, probably equivalent to a human child. "Hey, you know what fire is really bad at?" he asked gently. The young cryalien's voice chimed like wind through glass. What? Following plans. Fire's chaotic. It just does whatever it wants. But we're organized. We work together. That makes us stronger than fire will ever be." He stood, addressing all the cryaliens. "Your people are some of the toughest in the galaxy from what I've heard. Heat might hurt you, but you're not fragile. Trust me, and trust these wraps. They'll protect you." The adult cryaliens seemed to crystallize their resolve, literally, their structures becoming more rigid with determination. "All right, single file," Jake commanded. "Vorthax, you're my second in command. You'll be rear guard. Anyone stumbles, anyone needs help, you handle it. Keep the line moving." He locked eyes with the blue-skinned alien. "Can you do that?" The Vorthax nodded firmly. "I can, Human Jake." "Good man." Jake activated his helmet light and moved to the door. "Stay close. Watch where I step. If you see flame, don't panic, fire is predictable once you understand it. It goes up, it follows fuel, it needs oxygen. We're staying low, moving fast, and we're all getting out." He led them into the corridor, and immediately several survivors gasped. The walls were scorched black, and though Jake's coolant strategy had lowered the temperature, heat still radiated from every surface. Smoke drifted through the air in thick clouds, illuminated by Jake's lights like fog on a nightmare highway. "Keep moving," Jake called out. "Breathe slow and steady through your respirators. Don't think about where we are. Just think about where we're going." They moved as a unit, Jake counting heads constantly. 73 souls, all dependent on his knowledge and experience. The weight of it settled on his shoulders, but it was a familiar weight. This was what he'd trained for, what he'd chosen. Behind them, something exploded, probably a power conduit giving way to the heat. Several survivors cried out, and Jake heard the line falter. "Keep moving," he commanded. "That's just the fire throwing a tantrum. It knows we're winning." "How can you be so calm?" someone asked, voice muffled by a respirator. Jake smiled grimly inside his helmet. "Because I've fought fires in zero-gravity habitats, in underwater stations, in fusion reactor facilities, and once in a building that was actively collapsing. This?" He gestured around. "This is scary, yeah. But it's not impossible. Nothing's impossible if you know what you're doing and you refuse to quit." They pressed forward through the smoke and heat, 73 lives following one human firefighter who treated the inferno not as an unconquerable monster, but as a problem with a solution. And Jake Morrison was very good at solving problems. They were halfway through the evacuation corridor when Jake's heads-up display flashed a warning that made his blood run cold: oxygen level critical. The fire was consuming air faster than the station's recyclers could compensate. He glanced at his scanner and saw the problem immediately: flames had breached into Section 7D, right where they needed to pass through. "Commander Vexus," Jake spoke quietly into his private channel, not wanting to alarm the survivors. "I need options." The fire jumped containment. "We're aware." Vexus's voice was tight. "Jake, we can still vent the section. We can save most of them if we—" "No. We save all of them." He studied his scanner, his mind racing through scenarios. "What's below us? Sublevel 3? Yes, but it's industrial storage. Heavy machinery, fuel reserves." "Fuel reserves?" Jake's eyes lit up. "What kind of fuel?" "Deuterium plasma cells, hydrogen reserves for the shuttles, chemical accelerants for mining operations." "Jake, you cannot be considering." "That's exactly what I'm considering." He was already calculating. Fire needs 3 things: heat, fuel, and oxygen. Right now, it's got all 3. But if I can starve it of oxygen in a controlled way, create a backfire. "A backfire? You want to start another fire?" "Sometimes the only way to stop a wildfire is to burn the fuel ahead of it first," Jake explained, still moving the line of survivors forward. "You control what burns and when. The fire coming at us? It's chaotic, wild. But a fire I start and control? That's predictable." Morvik's voice cut in, trembling with emotion. "Jake, you're describing a theory that could kill everyone." "It's not a theory. It's firefighting 101. Jake reached the junction where he needed to make his decision. "But I need to do this alone. Vorthax, take the survivors through Junction 7 to the emergency corridor. Follow the green lights. Commander Vexus will guide you from there." The Vorthax moved up beside him. "What are you going to do, human Jake?" "Buy you time." Jake began removing equipment from his pack, incendiary charges, carefully calibrated for controlled burns. "Fire's predictable, remember? I'm going to give it something better to eat than you folks." A small voice chimed from the group, the young Cryalien. "Will you survive?" Jake met those crystalline eyes and smiled. "Kid, I've survived worse. Now go. Run fast, stay low, don't look back." As the survivors moved past him, Jake descended through an access hatch into sublevel 3. The storage area was a maze of containers and machinery, all potential fuel for his plan. He worked quickly, placing charges at carefully calculated points. This wasn't about creating an explosion, it was about creating a controlled fire that would consume the oxygen in a specific pattern, creating a temporary vacuum that the main fire couldn't cross. "Jake, your oxygen reserves are at 40%, Morvik warned. "If you don't leave now." "Almost done." Jake sealed his suit to internal oxygen and activated the incendiary sequence. He had 90 seconds before ignition. He ran toward the exit corridor, his boots pounding against the metal decking. The charges ignited behind him in a precise sequence, whomp, whomp, whomp. The backfire roared to life, a wall of flame that raced through the sublevel, consuming oxygen in a hungry rush. Jake felt the pressure wave hit him, pushing him forward, and he used the momentum to reach the corridor junction. His scanner showed what he'd hoped for: the main fire had stalled, starved of oxygen as his backfire created a temporary low-pressure zone. It wouldn't last long, maybe 4 minutes, but that was enough. Survivors clear? Jake demanded. Clear of the danger zone, Vexus confirmed, and Jake heard something new in her voice: respect. Jake, you just did something I thought impossible. You made fire retreat. Fire doesn't retreat, Jake corrected, checking his suit's integrity. I just gave it a better path. It'll burn itself out in sublevel 3 within 10 minutes. The fuel there is mostly clean burning, and I've sealed the ventilation to prevent oxygen resupply. He emerged into the safe corridor where the survivors waited, many of them staring at him as if he were some kind of mythical creature. The young cryalien ran forward, their crystalline body chiming with relief. You came back. You fought the fire and won. Jake knelt down, his helmet retracting. His face was covered in soot, his hair matted with sweat. I didn't fight fire, kid. I understood it. There's a difference. Fighting implies you can beat it through force. But fire doesn't care about force. It only cares about its needs: heat, fuel, oxygen. Take those away, and fire has no choice but to die. The Vorthax approached, extending a hand in what Jake recognized as a gesture of deep respect among his species. Human Jake, I have lived for 73 cycles. I have seen warriors, seen heroes. But I have never seen anyone face the consuming death with such calmness. It's just fire, Jake said simply, though he accepted the gesture. Scary, yeah. Dangerous, absolutely. But not mysterious. Not supernatural. Just a chemical reaction that follows rules. As they continued toward safety, Jake couldn't help but notice how the survivors looked at him differently now, not with the professional courtesy they'd shown before, but with genuine wonder. He realized then that on this station, among all these species from across the galaxy, he'd done something none of them could comprehend. He'd walked into the nightmare that terrified them all and emerged victorious not through strength or technology, but through knowledge and determination. The human firefighter had shown them that even the most primal fear could be overcome. Jake had just delivered the last survivors to the medical bay when the alarms changed pitch. The new sound made his teeth ache, 3 sharp pulses followed by a sustained tone. Station-wide emergency. Commander Vexus's face appeared on every screen throughout Station Alpha. All personnel, this is not a drill. Multiple fires have erupted across sections 3, 9, and 14. Cause unknown. We are initiating full station evacuation protocols. Jake's eyes narrowed as he pulled up the station schematic on a nearby terminal. 3 fires, simultaneous, in different sections with no connecting infrastructure. His gut, honed by 15 years of firefighting experience, told him what his mind didn't want to accept. They're not accidents, he said. Lieutenant Morvik, who had stayed close to Jake since the rescue, flickered with alarmed purple bioluminescence. What do you mean? Look at the pattern. Jake highlighted the 3 locations. Section 3 is near the primary power distribution. Section 9 is the oxygen production facility. Section 14 is the water reclamation system. Someone's targeting critical infrastructure. Sabotage. Morvik's patches went dark with horror. But who would? Don't know, don't care right now. Jake grabbed his gear, which he'd barely had time to remove. Right now, we stop the fires. We can play detective later. He ran toward the bridge, Morvik struggling to keep pace. When Jake burst through the doors, he found chaos. Vexus stood at the center, her 4 eyes tracking multiple screens simultaneously, her scales nearly white with stress. "Human Morrison," she began, "I must ask you to evacuate with the non-essential personnel." "With respect, Commander, I'm the most essential person on this station right now." Jake pointed at the tactical display. 3 fires, 3 critical systems. If we lose all 3, this station dies even if we put out the fires. No power, no oxygen, no water means everyone dies in space long before rescue arrives. Vexus's claws clicked against her console. "You're suggesting we prioritize?" "I'm suggesting we get smart." Jake pulled up detailed schematics. "The oxygen facility is the immediate threat, we've got maybe 30 minutes of reserve if that goes down. But it's also the most contained fire. The power distribution is spreading fast, but the station has backup generators. Water reclamation is," he paused, studying the data, "actually the key to everything." "Explain," Vexus commanded. "Water's not just for drinking. It's your fire suppression system, it cools your reactors, it's part of the oxygen recycling process. If we lose water reclamation, we can't fight the other fires effectively." Jake began sketching out a plan on the holographic display. "We need 3 teams. Automated drones won't work, fire's too intense. We need thinking beings who can adapt. But we have no one trained in firefighting," a Pelian officer protested. "No species in the Federation maintains such a profession." "Fire is too dangerous, then I'll train them." Jake turned to face the bridge crew. "Right here, right now. 5-minute crash course in not dying while fighting fire." Vexus studied him, her alien features unreadable. Then she made a decision that Jake could tell went against every instinct she had, the volunteers from the previous rescue. "The Vorthax who served as rear guard and several others have requested to assist you. They said," she paused, "that they said you taught them fear is just information." Jake felt something warm in his chest. "Smart group. Bring them in." 10 minutes later, Jake stood before an unlikely class of firefighter recruits, 5 Vorthax, 3 Krillin, 2 Pelians, and a stocky Gromnian whose rock-like hide made them naturally heat-resistant. "All right, people, here's the truth," Jake began. "Fire will kill you if you're stupid, and it'll probably hurt you even if you're smart. But it can be beaten. First rule, never face fire alone. You work in pairs, you watch each other's backs. Second rule, respect the fire but don't fear it. Fear makes you freeze. Respect makes you careful." He demonstrated the equipment: thermal suits, respirators, foam dispensers, thermal axes. "Your suits will protect you for about 8 minutes in extreme heat." That sounds like a lot. It's not. You get in, do your job, get out. "No heroics," the Gromnian, whose name was Thrak, rumbled a question. "What is our job?" "Team 1, that's you, Thrak, and you 3 Vorthax, you're on the oxygen facility. Your job is containment. Seal the fire in its current location, don't let it spread to the oxygen tanks. If those go, we all go. Use foam barriers, close bulkheads, vent compartments to space if you have to." Jake pointed to 2 Krillin. "Team 2, you're with me on water reclamation. We're going offensive. We're putting this fire out completely because we need that water system functional. And Team 3, he looked at the Pelians and remaining Vorthax, you're on the power distribution center. Tactical retreat, you're buying time. Use coolant, use barriers, slow the fire while engineering reroutes power through secondary systems." "That's insane," one of the Pelians said, but there was determination in his voice, not fear. 3 separate operations, all critical, all deadly, yeah. Jake smiled grimly, "Welcome to firefighting. Commander Vexus, I need constant communication between all teams. And I need the station AI running simulations of fire spread in real time. We adapt as we go." Vexus nodded. You have everything you need, Human Morrison. And Jake? She used his first name for the first time. Thank you. For showing us that the consuming death can be fought. Jake checked his equipment one final time. It's not about being fearless, Commander. It's about being more stubborn than the fire. And trust me, humans are very stubborn. As the three teams deployed to their respective fires, Jake couldn't help but think that this moment aliens of a dozen speciesal. Jake and his team materialized at the entrance to the water reclamation facility, and immediately he knew this would be the worst fire he'd ever faced. The heat signature on his scanner read 1,400 degrees in the core chamber, hot enough to melt titanium, hot enough to vaporize water instantly, which explained why the automated suppression systems had failed catastrophically. Team leaders, sound off, Jake commanded through the comm system. Team 1, in position at oxygen facility, Thrax's gravelly voice reported. Fire contained to outer chambers. We're holding. Team 3, engaging at power distribution, the Pelion leader called. Fire is. Jake, it's aggressive. Almost like it's hunting for specific targets. That confirmed Jake's suspicions. This wasn't natural fire behavior. Someone had engineered this catastrophe. But right now, he had a job to do. Copy that, Team 3. Remember, you're not trying to win, just slow it down. Team 2, with me. Jake led his two Krillin companions, Vex and Corian, into the facility. We're going to do something called a defensive attack. We're going to cool the fire's fuel source until it has nothing to burn. Vex, her purple scales gleaming in the emergency lights, hesitated. Jake, my people's instinct is to run from fire. Everything in my body is screaming to evacuate. I know. Listen to that fear, it's keeping you alert. But don't obey it. Channel it. Jake checked the facility layout. The fire's feeding on the chemical accelerants used in the water purification process. We cut off that supply, the fire starves. They moved deeper into the complex, and Jake felt the heat even through his advanced suit. The walls glowed red. The air itself seemed to shimmer with thermal distortion. And the sound, fire at this temperature didn't crackle, it roared like a living thing. There. Corian pointed to a massive pipeline system. That's the main accelerant feed. Perfect. We shut it down at the source. Jake approached the control panel, but the screen was already melting. Of course. Manual it is. He pulled out his thermal axe. I'm going to cut through to the emergency shut-off valve. You two foam the area around me, keep the heat from overwhelming my suit. They worked in concert, the Krillin deploying suppression foam while Jake cut through layers of heat-damaged metal. Sweat poured down his face inside his helmet. His suit's temperature alarm screamed at him. He ignored it. Jake, your suit's at 1,300 degrees, Morvik warned from the bridge. You're 15 degrees from suit failure. Then I'd better work fast. Jake's axe finally breached through to the valve chamber. He reached in, gloves already smoking, and wrenched the emergency lever. The valve shrieked as it closed, cutting off the accelerant supply. The fire responded immediately, its roar diminished, its color shifting from white-hot to orange-red. Still dangerous, but mortal now. It's working. Vex said, her voice filled with awe. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2, we attack. Jake pulled out his last piece of specialized equipment, a cryosprayer, typically used for industrial cooling. Fire this hot has momentum. It won't just die because we cut its fuel. We have to convince it to die. They advanced on the flames, Jake leading with the cryosprayer. The collision of extreme heat and extreme cold created explosions of steam that filled the chamber. Jake worked methodically, cooling the hottest points first, denying the fire its strongholds. Teams 1 and 3, status report, he called out while working. Team 1, fire contained and diminishing. We're going to save the oxygen facility. Thrak sounded proud. Team 3. The Pellion's voice was strained. We're in trouble. The fire breached our foam barriers. It's moving toward the primary reactor controls. Jake's blood ran cold. If fire reached the reactor controls, it could trigger a catastrophic feedback loop. Team 3, fall back to secondary position. I'm sending Vex and Corian to support you. Jake, you'll be alone, Vex protested. I've fought fires alone before. Go. Now. He watched them run, then turned back to the inferno before him. Just him and the fire, the way it had been dozens of times before in his career. All right, you bastard, Jake muttered, advancing with his cryosprayer. Let's dance. He moved through the reclamation facility like a conductor leading an orchestra, orchestrating cold against heat, foam against flame. He sealed compartments, vented chambers, created barriers of ice and water vapor. The fire fought back, seeking fuel, seeking oxygen, seeking any path to survival. But Jake Morrison understood fire better than it understood itself. 20 minutes later, covered in soot and ice crystals, Jake stood in the heart of the facility. The fire was dead. Completely extinguished. The water reclamation systems hummed back to life, damaged but functional. Team 2 leader to all units, Jake reported, his voice hoarse from smoke and exertion. Water reclamation secured. Fire eliminated. Repeat, fire eliminated. A cheer erupted over the comm system from the bridge crew. Jake, Commander Vexus said, her voice thick with emotion, Team 1 has successfully contained their fire. Team 3, with the support of Vex and Corian, has driven their fire back from the reactor controls. We are. Jake, we are winning. Jake allowed himself a small smile. He'd just taught an entire station of aliens that fire, their ultimate nightmare, could be beaten through knowledge, courage, and teamwork. Commander, we're not done yet. These fires were deliberate. Someone on this station started them. We need to find out who before they try again. Agreed. Station security is already investigating. But Jake, even if we find the saboteur, you've already given us something more valuable than victory. You've given us hope. Jake started the long walk back to the bridge, exhausted but satisfied. In his mind, he was already analyzing the fires, looking for patterns, clues, anything that would lead to the arsonist. Because firefighters didn't just fight fires. They protected people. And whoever had endangered Station Alpha was going to learn that lesson the hard way. Jake Morrison sat in the station's security center, his fire gear finally removed, studying surveillance footage. His body ached, his hands were blistered even through his gloves, and he'd consumed enough water to hydrate a small village. But his mind was sharp, analyzing data the way he'd analyzed countless fire scenes before. There, he said, pointing at a screen. Section 3, 17 minutes before the fire started. Who is that? Security Chief Dravik, a massive Krillin with black scales, enhanced the image. That's Engineer Kellen. Human, like you. He was part of the engineering crew assigned to Section 3 that day. Jake's heart sank. A human. Of course. Where is he now? We're searching. After the fires started, he disappeared. Dravik pulled up Kellen's file. He transferred to Station Alpha 3 months ago from Mars Colony. Excellent credentials, no disciplinary issues. What about psychological evaluations? Clean. But. Dravik hesitated. His previous station, Mars Colony, had a fire incident 6 months ago. Small, contained quickly, ruled accidental. I want to talk to him. Alone. Jake stood, his expression grim. And I need my gear. They found Kellen in Section 12, in an observation bay overlooking the vast emptiness of space. The human engineer stood at the window, his reflection ghostly in the transparent aluminum. He was younger than Jake, maybe 30, with the hollow eyes of someone carrying a burden. Kellen, Jake said quietly, entering alone as he'd requested. We need to talk about the fires. Kellen didn't turn around. I knew they'd send you.